Welcome back to the program. This is Tom Curran with Father Jeff Lewis, and we are talking about we're in the afterglow. We're actually recording this during the octave of Easter. So, Father, I don't want to keep you in suspense any longer. You're going to do some living discernment with me.
All right.
I don't know how many folks that are listening will face this kind of circumstance. Actually, I think pretty much you all do if you have teenagers. So here's my question. So you're someone that appreciates movies and music, and not just sacred music and like movies like The Passion of the Christ. And so the question becomes, how do we help our kids navigate what they watch and what they attend? Okay, so there are general guidelines that if thing is manifestly evil, on the one hand, we avoid that, right? Or just disgustingly offensive, we avoid that. On the other hand, if there's music and movies that glorify God, that's easy.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
That's a no-brainer, right? You can watch God's Not Dead or The Passion of the Christ or Therese, or Jesus of Nazareth. Okay, so there's this sort of, let's call it the black and white. Okay, it's dealing with the gray.
Yeah.
That I want some help with. This is a living, real question. And John Mark has said to me, "Have you asked Father Lewis yet?" And I said, "I'm going to ask him
on the
live
air.
on the radio." So this is a real situation unfolding. There is a concert coming to town, Journey.
Okay.
So the
great
called a
80s
rock
band.
group, the great '80s band, Journey. Though most of the people in the band are probably close to 80 at this point. So there are a couple of old guys, OGs, that are still in the group, but most of the group is gone. Okay, so they're coming to town and having a concert, and there's another group that is opening for them, Toto.
Oh,
do you remember
the original Toto?
Yeah.
The one-hit wonder, Africa?
Is that what it is? Okay, there we go. So they, and I think there's another one called Hold the Line or Toe the Line.
Oh, yeah. Something like that.
I don't even know if that's the words. Da-da-da. Love isn't always on time. I'm not going to something like that. Okay.
Sing it, Tom.
They don't. It's terrible. So they only have a couple of songs that they're probably known for, maybe a one-hit wonder. Okay, so John Mark is saying to me, so he's going because he enjoys their music, but it only got introduced to their music through I think a movie, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
So I think that one of their songs, because they kind of did the remix tape as part of their movie.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the songs was a Journey song. So he started listening to some Journey songs on like Spotify or whatever. And so he, it's snappy. It's kind of fun music in some ways. But he said to me that there are like 3 songs that have certain lyrics that are not morally upright.
Okay.
And like referencing either like it's an allusion towards fornication. Okay. Right? Like lying next to you kind of thing.
Okay.
And there's no direct indication that they're married in the song. Like I think one's called Open Arms and Faithfully. Like these are like famous songs.
Yeah.
But there are some lines in these songs that are not honoring to Christ. They don't clearly manifest church teaching in terms of the moral values. And so his question is, am I committing a sin by going to that concert if there are like a small number of lyrics in a small number of songs that are not Christ honoring?
Okay.
And so I can tell you how I was answering, because I've dropped this on you like a bomb live on the radio. Here you go. So I said, well, there's black and white, but I said, we're talking about something that's gray.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, if we're going to like evaluate this, there's 2 ways to evaluate it. One is, how does it sit with your conscience? Like, what can you do versus what is more objectively right?
Sure.
Now he's going because it's a buddy of his from school. It's his birthday.
Okay.
And his dad, who loves Journey, and he's a very devout man of faith, a man of like real deep faith and integrity, and really talk about hold the line. The guy is raising their kids in a way that is very protective of their innocence and all of that, but he enjoys the music, so he's going. So, the dad of this junior in high school is going to the concert with his son and with a couple of John Mark's friends. Okay, so here's the question. John Mark is like, can I go? I'd like to go. I'd like to go enjoy. I enjoy most of the music. I don't like a couple of those words. And so I've used a couple of approaches. One was, can you redeem the song? Like in your mind, even though the intent of the writer of that song may have been portraying a relationship that is immoral, can you, in your mind, redeem it by saying, I don't see that from the context of this is an immoral relationship, but I see it in the context of a married relationship, or I just don't say that what he's describing there is in fact fornication, but rather just something that is more innocent.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you redeem the song? Number one. Number two, in terms of conscience, is this like St. Paul eating meat sacrificed to idols? Right? So in Romans and 1 Corinthians, there's that idea that at the first century, you had this meat brought to temple for the idols to eat. Well, they can't eat anything. So then that was sold in the market. And so you had some early believers who maybe came from the practice of that false religion, that pagan religion. Now they're Christians.
Okay.
And so they're like, I can't eat that meat because that is a sign of participating in the act of worship that is idolatrous. Okay. And I'm leaving that behind. And St. Paul is like, well, it's a false god. It's not a true act of worship. It's not real idolatry. I can eat meat all day long, but I won't eat meat ever again if it's going to scandalize you, the weaker brother.
Right.
So I said to John Mark, if you are like St. Paul, then you can eat meat. You can attend that concert. You can enjoy that music. You can say no to the immorality that's there because, you know what? This is the gray world we're living in. And so you can actually, can you do that? But if you can't, then don't go. If it's going to be a matter of conscience for you, where you feel like I'm doing something that is akin to, maybe not the same as, but akin to, worship of a false god, it doesn't glorify Christ, and therefore I'm going to be committing a sin by attending the concert just because of the few words and a few songs, and then who knows what else might happen during the concert, then don't go. But if you can redeem it, if you can realize that, no, I can enjoy the music without affirming what they intend by certain lyrics. Right. Okay. Whew, this is like
I got about 4 responses.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Okay, and I've got one last one that I used, and that was for 1 Timothy, where Paul says to Timothy, hey, drink some wine. It's good for your stomach, right? So it's a created good. And I said, wine is a created good. It's not evil. But for some people, it could lead them down a path of sin.
Right.
So it's not a sin to go into a bar. You can go into a bar and you can drink, but you don't drink to excess because now you've fallen into sin.
Right.
So I said, music is like wine. It's a created good, and you can enjoy music without falling into a dark use of it. So those are all the things that I came up with.
Yeah.
None of them were satisfactory.
For you or for John Mark?
For John Mark.
Okay. Well, let me try. So first of all, just a caveat at the beginning, I don't think I'm aware of the exact language of the lyrics. So just take that as a, that may color the rest of my responses. I just don't. I'm responding with less than all the facts. Okay, so, but there's a lot of ifs, ands, buts, maybes, and all this going on. Does he know for sure what was the intent of the songwriter? Does he know for sure that it's actually not just implying but explicitly stating this is an unmarried situation, that it's going to lead to this? It sounds like from what you're describing that's all of that is not for sure. Even the larger context can still, maybe that is John Mark's interpretation of the lyrics, whereas if I read the lyrics, I might not even see that at all. And so that's not to say anything wrong about John Mark's interpretation of lyrics. It's just that's one person's interpretation of the lyrics. And so the distinction, I think a key distinction between that circumstance, the music, and the sacrificing meat to idols, that would go back to the intention of the original purpose of that product. So the intention of the meat was offered to sacrifice, and maybe that's where the problem is. But it seems like it's an unknown what was the intention of the songwriter with this particular verse. If that's an aspect of what makes it problematic.
Yeah, at least in one of the songs, it's a kind of an implication. The implication is, if you read into it, the idea that you're lying next to each other is implying, but doesn't necessarily express the idea that you're being intimate in a way that's inappropriate.
Yeah. But I mean that still means that there is room for a gray area, right? And so
let's imagine there isn't, though. Let's make it clear and say that on a couple of songs there are expressions of immorality, like adultery, or fornication. Like those would probably be the things that are most expressed in a couple of these songs. And what I said to him was, I've sung, I'm definitely aware of those songs. They were super popular and all that. And I maybe even have sung some of them. Not that it was a big popular group of mine, but it never really, he's not afraid that it's going to wash over him and sow seeds in him that will lead him into immorality. It's more, am I
celebrating this by attending or listening to it?
And singing out loud the lyrics of a song that are...
and even then, the question might be, is the song, even if it explicitly mentions it, is it celebrating it? Like, for example, I can't remember the group. I think it's some kind of, like a Dixie Chicks kind of group. They have a song. It's like Earl's Dead, and I think that's what it's called. But the song basically celebrates their conspiracy to murder this guy Earl. I think that not only do they explicitly mention the murder, they celebrate it. Whereas if they mention a murder, like you can listen to Johnny Cash's song. I think it's the song where he's Folsom Prison Blues or something like that. He has a line in there, I killed a man in Reno just to watch him die. That's awful. But the larger context of that song is he's kind of just telling the story of how he ended up here, kind of a thing. And he's just a low bum, don't live like me kind of a thing. So you can even, just because something's explicitly mentioned, the larger context, is it celebrating it, or is it just mentioning it, or is it actually, setting something up for don't do this, kind of a thing. I mean, you see how this gets complicated. It kind of gets into a fact. There's another.
Well, I'm looking at the song faithfully, and I can see it says, and being apart ain't easy on this love affair. Two strangers learn to fall in love again. But this doesn't look like he's talking about a girlfriend versus a wife. Okay. And he's certainly not talking about adultery. He's saying it's hard to be married to a music man, or it's hard to be with and loving a music man ain't always what it's supposed to be. But you stand by me, I'm forever yours faithfully. So it's actually that's a good song. I think that was one of the lines he was saying, is that it says the word love affair, but it's not saying that.
See, I would interpret the larger context of, I'm aware of that lyric, and the lyric is like, because he's a music man, he's on tour all the time. He's away from potentially, maybe it's his wife. It doesn't explicitly say that. So it's like, they're lovers. Let's say they're married, but because they're spending so much time apart, he comes back maybe a completely different person for a while, that they are like strangers. They have to learn to fall in love again. I mean, you could kind of sing the same thing about the traveling salesman or these kind of things because of the time they spend apart. So anyway, that's my interpretation of that lyrics, But I would go back to intentionality too. I think that is an aspect. There's a popular song from the late '90s, I think, called "Closing Time." Now, the first time I heard this song, if you listen to the lyrics, it sounds very much on the outside like it's celebrating the hookup culture that happens in bars. But then I read an article. I don't know what the article was about, but actually the guy who wrote that song, it was all a metaphor for the birth of his firstborn son, and the marriage, and so he wanted to write this song, and they were like, well, it's got to be something that's catchy for college kids, and he said, well, okay, I'll do like Closing Time. So anyway, it's an interesting, and now that I know that, I listen to the song, that's all I can here. And so a repetitive thing in the refrain is, I want you to take me home tonight. Well, it's his son saying to his mom, take me home tonight, get me out of this hospital. That's how that was his intention as he was writing it.
So there's a song called Baby Baby by, what's her name? Grant. The Christian.
Cary Grant?
No. Christian singer. Amy Grant.
Amy Grant, okay.
Amy Grant, Baby
Cary Grant,
Baby,
that's
I'm
an
taken with
actor.
the notion to love
Amy
you with
Grant.
the sweetest of devotion. She's actually singing about her daughter, not about a lover.
Yeah.
But the video is her with a guy.
Oh.
But the song's intention is actually about her child, singing
Okay.
to her child. So you're right. And I'm actually looking at this other song, Open Arms. It doesn't have to be taken in a way that's sinful.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. All right, back in a minute on more of this conversation. Hi, this is Dr. Tom Curran, and you know me as the host of Sound Insight. I am also letting folks know that as a realtor licensed in the state of Washington and in Idaho, I love serving Catholic families and others who are discerning a move for yourselves. It's much more than buying or selling a home. It's discerning a whole new life. If that's something that you would find a help in, if I could be of service to you, please be in touch. You can find out more at drtomcurran.com. drtomcurran.com.
This is real life stuff.
As Father just said, it's real life stuff we're dealing with today. And we're dealing with it live. This is like a live counseling session. So, so one of the other songs that John Mark mentioned was Open Arms. And it's definitely about wanting to be having someone that he cares about in his arms, and how it's hard being away, not having her in his life and the house is empty. But again, if you said, it doesn't necessarily even express anything that is of itself sinful, because it definitely could be taken as a husband and a wife, rather than as two lovers or that sort of thing. I'm not even aware of what other song he's talking about, but you can see how, so that's one of the points. One of the points was, what's the intention?
Yeah.
Make sure, and is there room to interpret the intention in a way that isn't sinful?
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Well, like you said, it could be, if I hear these lyrics and my mind goes immediately into something of a sordid nature, and therefore it's going to tempt me into some kind of sexual fantasy or something like that, the problem is not necessarily the thing itself. That's maybe morally neutral, but it was a near occasion of sin for me. So you mentioned earlier the wine. Wine is morally neutral for, you and me and most of our listeners, but for someone who maybe is a recovering alcoholic, wine is a near occasion of sin potentially. So keep that away. And so, it's not sinful as such for me to step into a bar, but if I'm a recovering alcoholic and I step into a bar, why would I go there? And, for any other reason, well, the food is good. Well, they serve the same food over at this other place that's not a bar. Whatever the case may be, you're putting yourself in a near occasion of sin, and you're weakening the will that's already weak. And so that in itself is maybe a venial sin, but it's going to lead to a greater sin. And so if John Marker and these other guys going to this concert, and they hear this lyric and they interpret it in a sexual way that leads them to a near occasion of sin, entertaining lust, that could be the problem. But like you mentioned, that's not John Mark. He's not getting overwashed with this, but that's another thing to consider.
Right. Well, and let's talk about that one,
Yeah.
because this isn't just John Mark and Journey. Like, this is so many parents who have kids who are listening to music and going to concerts.
Yeah.
And let's just say that I don't think there are going to be a lot of scantily clad teenage girls at Journey.
Yeah.
Okay. It's I actually found the concert online, so there's a full recording of the concert. So that's something that I've done to say, look, you can actually watch the concert just to kind of preview it, to say, is there anything here that's going to be potentially like a near occasion of sin for you? And when I scrolled through it, it's a bunch of old guys in both groups. There's literally no girl on the stage at all. It's just literally a bunch of old guys singing these tunes from the 80s. And granted, I didn't get to see a lot of the concert goers, but I'm just presuming that, again, that they're going to be people that look a lot more like me than look like him. in terms of who's in attendance.
Yeah.
Okay. But with that said, near occasion of sin, one of the things I said to John Mark was, look, we talk about black, white, and then there's this gray area. And I said the gray area was, if a gray area is what's a near occasion of sin, I said, well, then you can't go to work. And then you can't go to the mall.
Right.
You can't actually drive down most roads that have billboards.
Yeah.
Because you're going to bump into near occasions of sin almost anywhere you go. I said you can't even hang around with almost everybody you hang around with who are actually quite moral, faith-filled people, because you know what? They're going to say an off word that's maybe a swear word now and then, or they're going to bring up a topic that isn't directly honoring to Christ. So I was saying to him that
You're going to have to live as a hermit.
I said literally go in your room, shut the door, and I'll slide pizza under the door. Right. But not in the box, because I don't want the box to be an occasion of sin for you. But, it's like you have to be in the world, but not of the world. Right. And you have to be in the world as salt, light, and leaven. Yeah. And you have to be able to be in the world and be able to say, how can I arm myself to honor Christ? And he's like, that's all well and good, but I'm choosing to go to the concert versus I'm choosing to, like I don't have to go to the public pool in the summer where, if there's just going to be, girls dressed in string bikinis. Okay, yeah.
And if he's driving down Sprague Avenue, he's not choosing that billboard suddenly come at him.
Yeah, and he can avert his eyes.
Yeah, and he can avert his eyes. Yeah, I see his distinction. He's a pretty smart kid there, isn't he? He's thinking
Carrie,
on these
when I was talking about this with Carrie, she's like, who is this son of ours?
Yeah.
And so I said to him, so would it make you, he said, what I don't want to do is go to the concert and feel like I'm going to end up going to confession afterwards because I've committed at least a venial sin. Or if I go knowing I'm going to commit a venial sin, then I'm presuming on God's mercy and now I've committed a mortal sin. And I'm like, dang, who are you?
Yeah.
So I said, well, let me ask Father Lewis. So honestly, and it was the idea is that I said, if I could get Father Lewis to sign off on it, to say, it's not the rapper that is singing about, prostitutes and, talk about language and dancing and, you use the word sordid stuff, which is just manifest everywhere. That's not journey. That's not journey. And we have proof it's not journey because you can watch the video.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, we're doing everything we can to try to set you up to say you're not falling into sin by doing this. You're doing something that is innocent, and if it is a potential near occasion of sin, you can do things so that it doesn't become an occasion of sin. Yeah. All right, so that was just the first one. So there are, Father, just to say, there are concerts where you would say, no, do not let your kids go to those concerts. Is that right?
I would say so. I mean, I'm thinking now like the Super Bowl. I don't know if the Super Bowl as such is fine. It was I was cheering for KC, so I was happy. But that Super Bowl halftime show was just abysmal. I think that it was sexually charged from start to finish. Scantily clad, whoever was singing, and then the dance moves were horrendously sexually explicit. I think a lot of them. And that's a greater, worse near occasion of sin for the average person, I would suspect, than Journey.
So what we did, we went to a Super Bowl party where we basically had an agreement with the other people at the party that we would pause the TV when it went to commercial, and then we would just wait, and then we'd skip over commercials and come back to the game.
Yeah.
And we'd turn the TV off during halftime.
Yeah.
So
that's what most people should have done.
Well, isn't that great? I mean, and that was, but you have to have a TV where someone has the ability to pause live TV.
Right.
And we're not that sophisticated around here, but he did. And so it was like everyone agreed. It was like, let's just keep all of the kids that are here away from unnecessarily unnecessary messaging coming across in commercials or especially during the halftime show. So I don't know who it was that sang.
Yeah.
Because I didn't literally even see 1 second of the halftime show.
Yeah.
So
Well, it was awful, and I don't know why we didn't just turn off the TV when we were at a Super Bowl party, but we were just snacking over here and playing games or whatever. But in any event, another factor that maybe is what John Mark is worried about, what a lot of other kids might worry about, is I'm not tempted by this, but maybe my friend is going there lending. Am I showing that I'm lending support to this? Is that causing the scandal? I suspect that's
Absolutely.
maybe John Mark's concern.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's something. I mean, but then I mean, if your concern is to avoid scandal, then you're really in the same pickle as the problem is near occasions of sin, because you might just have to become a hermit again, because just the fact that you're standing outside on the deck here, let's say, are you lending support to the fact that whatever, you can really contrive something in some instances.
And that's what I said. You're gonna squish down your life really into a tiny ball. But let's talk about this again. This is real life, folks. If you've got teenagers, let's say the kids are going to go to a party where there's drinking and smoking marijuana and then hooking up and stuff like that. You know that's going to be happening at the party. Well, do you go to say, I'm going to be in solidarity with my friend and help rescue him from stuff? Or do I go because he wants to go because of the friends that he's going to be there? Or do you say, you know what? Can't do that.
Right.
So and
that comes back to your intent, I would think. Excuse me. If I were invited to a party like that, and I'm going to have to discern that, okay, I'm going to go there, but that's because I'm going to find ways to proclaim Christ and to rescue some people, and that's bold, because you're going to be the only one there, and no one else is even thinking in that level. Or I might recognize, if I go there, I'm going to be overwhelmed. I might just be part of the world now, not in the world only, but in and of the world. Or I might have to choose, I'm just not going to go. But then for me, I'm just thinking, for me personally, if I choose not to go at all, I might be agonizing over, did I have a missed opportunity to proclaim Christ as salt, light, and leaven? Or am I exercising?
Or am I fooling myself?
Or am I exercising prudence, knowing that was not the time and place, and I'm not the one to do it? I just know myself and my weakness.
Yeah.
You can see how the discernment really just is multifaceted.
That
and deep.
gray thing, right? It's like it's personal. It's both subject. It's to the subject. It's not just subjective, but it's also objective. I'm going to tell you a story in a minute. Welcome back to the program. Today's program is called Living Discernment. So this is great, Father Lewis. I love this conversation. And folks, again, this is real life, and this is us trying to navigate stuff together. And I bring it up because I wanted your guidance, Father, but I also wanted folks to listen, to be able to discern, how are we parenting our kids, our young adults, our teenagers, when it comes to things like accessing content on media, so music, videos, et cetera, et cetera. So when I was growing up, one of my buddies converted. He returned to the Catholic faith. He was not practicing his faith. He ended up saying he was an atheist, very smart, moral guy. But when he came back to the faith, he came back with fire, and just on fire. So as like a sophomore in high school, I was about to enter the seminary, and we went to a party with just some college friends, and he stayed in the car. He drove with us to the party and said, I'm not going in. He stayed in the car while we went into the party.
Wow.
How's that?
Yeah.
Dang. And it was, for him, I don't want to waste my time with that. If you guys want to go, that's fine, but I'm just going to wait out here. And let me tell you, we went in, but he was present. Do you know how he was present? Through his absence.
Mm-hmm.
Through his absence, he was present to us. And it was a bit of a, sting in the conscience. Mm-hmm. Isn't that striking?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's now a Discalced Carmelite monk. So
there you go.
Yeah, friar. So, and a priest. And so a holy man of God, just a holy man of God. But boy, he was a guy who was like, you can go, that's fine. And, he wasn't afraid that I was going to go get drunk, right? That wasn't my thing. And I was with other friends that were also, again, moral and living their Catholic faith. And it was fine on the one hand, but on the other hand, it was, I don't want to expose myself to that.
Yeah.
I don't need to expose myself to that. Why do you want to waste your life doing that? I'm just going to stay in the car and I'll pray. And I'm like, grumble, grumble, grumble. You just ruined all my fun. So we stayed for a while and then we ended up leaving, right? And, to be with him. So it was how's that?
Yeah.
How's it get friends like that growing up?
Yeah.
Isn't that
I
pretty
wish
cool?
I had friends like that growing up. I wish I was that friend growing up.
So, all right. So let's come back to help parents.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is that, as far as you know, based on what you've heard about the fact that I actually have access to the entire concert, like here's a video of the tour at an earlier stop, beginning to end. So I can preview it. I've confirmed so far that there's nothing immoral. I'm not saying that there isn't a song that doesn't have more than an allusion to immorality. But as far as you can see, there's no reason why John Mark shouldn't be able to go enjoy the concert.
No, I don't think so. I think he'd be fine to go. In fact, he could make it into an opportunity of grace. That's the next point I was going to think about raising, is that he could have, what if he had the same conversation after the concert? Maybe they go out for milkshakes or ice cream or something afterwards, and they had a similar conversation around the table that we're having now. Like, what did you think about these lyrics, or how would you interpret them? And they had a conversation like that. And for some of my friends in seminary, we actually did, something that, I don't know if I would let a young kid see the Christopher Nolan Batman films. They're pretty dark, if they're not like explicitly gruesome, but they're pretty dark. I think they would be overwhelming for a preteen. I think they're only rated PG-13, but I mean, that's stretching it. I mean, so we would watch these movies, and we watched the second one, the one with the Joker, and we get to the end of that one. I don't know if you've ever seen this one, but at the end of it, the main protagonists are having this conversation about one of the good guys goes bad and he becomes Two-Face and all this. So anyway, that's going to be devastating for the people of Gotham City if it's found out that their hero, this DA, actually ended up being a villain. So we're going to choose to ignore that truth and manufacture this other truth for the sake of the people. Well, we came out of there thinking, what kind of morality is that? You're thinking, so everything is relative now for the purposes of what you need in the here and now? I mean, we saw a very utilitarian and relativistic message in that, and we were pretty disgusted. We hated that movie. And so then the third one came out, and the repercussions of those decisions at the end of the second one came home to roost at the beginning of the third one. And now we're like, now we get it. Like, that wasn't the point that the filmmaker was doing. He was setting it up for the conflict of the third one. And it played brilliantly. So now I like the second one again because of where it was going.
Yeah, as long as you watch the third one.
Yeah, as long as you watch the third one.
Nice. Now I have permission to watch a third one.
Yeah,
All right.
And but I mean, the point of my story there is that objectively maybe we ought not have gone to that movie potentially, but we made it into we made it into a moment of grace by having this conversation about the morality that the film was trying to depict. Now, I think there's a line you could definitely draw. Earlier in seminary, some friends wanted to watch this movie. One friend wanted to watch this movie called Hostel. This is not a movie to watch. It's in the same category as like those Saw films, these other ones that are they're gross for the sake of gross. They're ultra violent for the sake of ultra violence. And he said, I think we should watch this and discuss its morality. I said, I can tell you the morality right now. It's awful. So we did. It was awful, and I was right. And so that's something I can't unsee. So there's a line.
Okay, so let me tell you, here's a true story. When I first entered the seminary, it was VCRs. Okay, so there wasn't no streaming services.
Yeah.
And so parents would send us or give to their kids, their young men in the seminary. This is the minor seminary. I'm a junior in college. And there was a room where we would put in these videotapes that they would tape a movie at home and then bring it in. And so we put in a videotape, right? And all of a sudden you're in a movie and we're watching the movie, and it was like, okay, this is getting a little bit steamy. Okay, we don't think we should be watching. And then the scene would go on. It would like disappear. Okay, it would move on to the next scene. And it's like, okay, we're back in safe territory. Now we get into this is a little bit, we don't know. And that happened a couple of times. And then, literally, as we moved into like the next occasion of that, the movie started to break up. And it was because you could reuse VHS tapes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was taping over another movie. Okay. the movie it was taped over appeared from underneath. The movie it had taped over was Jesus of Nazareth.
Uh-huh.
And the scene that appeared was the scourging at the pillar.
What?
I swear to you, this is what happened.
That's a God moment.
So that it appears, and then it disappears, and the movie comes back on. Let me tell you, the movie got turned off, the lights came on, and everybody left.
We went on with our day.
Holy cow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
How striking is that? It's one of those, would you really watch this movie if you realized that Jesus was next to you? Would you watch this movie if you connected it to what Christ had done for you?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, that, talk about shines a bright light on things. So that actually happened in the seminary.
That's pretty awesome.
How cool is that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I do think that there are also seasons. So, like for instance, John Mark, in his discovery of the music, so kind of classic rock era, 70s, 80s, Beatles. So he started to really like the Beatles. He learned more about the Beatles, and now he doesn't listen to the Beatles anymore.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
It's the Beatles are an interesting group because of how dramatic their shift as a kind of a group and their group culture, through their very dramatic time together. Because the early Beatles was very similar to any of the others, kind of those peppermint pop, songs from the 50s and 60s. Then they went crazy, and then they went drug-addled crazy, and I mean,
and then religiously weird.
Yeah, religiously weird. And some of their songs are some of them off, like that song "Imagine." What a terrible song!
Right, and it's so popular.
Yeah, it's so popular, but it's so terrible. But there's another one though. It's "Hey Jude" that has beautiful lyrics. At one point he's praying to Mother Mary. I don't know if you listen to that song, but "Mother Mary, come to me, let it be." No, that's "Let It Be," not "Hey Jude," "Let It Be." But anyway, so. I mean, the Beatles, they're an interesting group, but I mean, that whole era, I mean, so much of their writing was, addled with, drug fueling and all the rest. And so should you just discount the whole darn thing because of that? I don't. Yeah.
Well, and then last one, and we're running out of time. We should talk more about this on another occasion.
Yeah.
So now we have access to streaming, and so the middle has that Patricia Heaton.
Oh,
she's like a Catholic.
Yeah, very strong
And it's
Catholic.
it seems like it's a pretty not going to be so inappropriate, but they take the Lord's name in vain, and it started to really bother us. And it's like we're not going to watch this anymore.
Yeah.
Even though it's funny and it's darling, and you don't have sex scenes, you don't have swearing and all that, but then wait a minute, you have the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah.
That unfortunately ruins the whole thing.
Yeah.
So. Folks, this is something that, again, we just kind of walked with you through, a living situation. And Father Lewis, I appreciate your willingness to take this on live, which was so cool.
Yeah. Well, the key really quick, conversations with your kids, that's where all this can come to light, just like you're having with John Mark. You can really discuss any of these things, but open and honest conversations with your kids.
Yeah, and sometimes you do have to lay down the law and say, I love you enough not to let you listen to that music, watch those shows, go to those concerts, or hang around with those people, because I have a responsibility to help you, to lead, provide, and protect you as a parent. And I love you that much. So, all right, thanks, Father Lewis. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, God bless you all. Join me tomorrow for more